Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Rosa and Rubini podcast, Making Sense of This World. My name is Manas Chavla, and as always, I have the pleasure this time of it being in person, joined by Mr. Brunello Rosa, CEO and Head of Research of Rosa and Rubini Associates. This week, we're discussing global politics in turmoil and what will emerge from the chaos. We've seen, quite a bit happen in electoral terms, whether that's in France or the UK over the last few weeks, but also on some of the more macro developments. The long-term trajectory of the American elections coming up in November, and of course the ongoing war in Ukraine. So let's unpack there, but let's start firstly at France because that's perhaps where the most significant news is coming from, Brunello. They have a peculiar two-round voting system in the second round. We've just gotten the results of. What were the results? Was this aligned with our expectations? And what does this tell us about France and Europe's political trajectory?
Yeah, so the entire process, as we know, started on the 30th of June, the first round, when Marine Le Pen and her party confirmed to be the most popular with 30% plus of votes, and all the others were quite distant. But then the second round came, and the second round is for all those candidates that reached at least 12.5%. Now, typically, this is the round in which the so-called desistance is agreed on, which means that if there is somebody that believes it would only damage those who are closer to them, they just retire. And this is the way, you tend to converge towards those who are less distant from you. In the first round, you go for the one you like the most. In the second one, you eliminate the one that you hit the least, you hate the least, so to speak. So, and this has worked well. Again, the sort of pact républicain. So this idea that democratic forces should join, prevent Le Rassemblement National, before it was called the Front National, from winning, have been displayed. It seemed dead in the first round, but in reality, in the second round, it survived. Now, with the second round, there was actually the surprise that the left-wing coalition managed to get first, and then Macron coalition came second, and the Rassemblement National third. So for sure, the Rassemblement National will be out of government for the foreseeable future. Now, the question is, will the other two parties, coalition, will manage to join forces to form a government? In reality, I think the key is in the composition of the Nouveau Front Populaire, which is effectively the left-wing coalition, is made of four components: the Socialists, the France Insoumise by Mélenchon, the Greens, and the Communists. Now I think Macron will appeal to the Socialists and the Greens to join a sort of grand coalition of centrist parties, which would include also Les Républicains. And Les Républicains have been purged from those who actually wanted a coalition with Le Pen. So now they are out, perhaps, being voted together with Le Pen's candidates. But Les Républicains themselves now are, for sure, those who never want to do anything to do with Le Pen. So a grand coalition that goes from Les Républicains to potentially the Socialist Party, of course, passing through Macron's bloc, is the most likely scenario. Question is, what is going to happen after that?
Yeah. Moving towards Hungary, Viktor Orban, the controversial head of state of Hungary, has, brushed a few feathers within the European Union, to put it politely, over the last few years, is now taking over the rotating presidency of the EU and is scheduled to visit both Zelensky in Kiev in Ukraine and Putin in Moscow in Russia. Very few world leaders are able to do both, much less on the same trip. What is to say about Orban's posture towards the war? And do you think it has any impact of actually changing what happens on the ground in the next few months?
You hope it has. In reality, it doesn't, because in order to be a real mediator, you need to have a mandate, and he didn't have any. And the Europeans were very clear on that. You can visit whoever you want as Hungarian prime minister. Don't go there and pretend to be in representation of the EU because you have no mandate. Actually, the EU was kind of strongly saying if there's a chance of winning this war is by showing unity. In reality, if you go there without the consensus of all the others, you're just creating cracks in this unity. And so this is a favor to Putin. Now, Putin himself has already been pleased by hearing from Le Pen that she would not authorize the use of long distance weapons that France sent to Ukraine. And he was also pleased to hear that US candidate Trump said that the US may stop sending money to Ukraine unless they negotiate with Russia. But the condition to negotiation, according to Trump, surprisingly to say, would be that Russia keeps the territory and NATO promises that Ukraine will never join NATO. Now, these are not conditions for a ceasefire. This is a capitulation to Russians' demand. So it's totally unacceptable. It's go absolutely nowhere. But not surprisingly, Putin say, I'm sure that these are sincere proposals. I don't think they're going to go anywhere. Unless Trump wins, in which case then all bets are off.
Yeah, and then I mean that makes the question, where does that leave the United States? Obviously, with the sort of upcoming election now, which is neck and neck and between Biden and Trump, but there's even the question of whether Biden will actually be the Democrat nominee. But whoever it is, and it seems like at least for the time being, he's the chosen candidate of the left. What like how is the sort of electoral calculus seeming to be, 4 to 5 months out?
So we're talking about political chaos. In the US, this is abundant. In the Democratic camp, lots of people are asking Biden to step down, including large and influential donors of Biden himself. But it doesn't seem like he wants to. He already said, I'm going to remain in the race. I'm the only one that can beat Trump. Trump himself is, while being absolutely certain to be appointed as the nominee of the Republican Party in July, in reality is facing fresh, let's call them scandals, if you can use that word with Trump. The first one is his potential involvement in the Epstein case. We knew revelations coming up after some documents were released without the cover names that they were before. So effectively, by uncovering those names, and the name of Trump comes up a few times. Now, these will have a little bearing on those who want to vote Trump no matter what, but may have an impact on those who are uncertain. And we know in swing state, this could make, in fact, a difference and have an impact. The second scandal, if you want, more political, and to some extent even more relevant, is regarding this Project 2025 that is being set up by the Heritage Foundation. Now, this is about what to do to establish a sort of autocratic regimes in the US, and starting from effectively getting rid of the deep state that has opposed most of Trump's reform in the first term, replacing with a bunch of loyalists, which have already been recruited, 20,000 of them, ready to get the position as soon as Trump becomes president. So in order to stop this project from happening, there's only one solution, is not voting for Trump. So, but that is going to be at the center of the debate for the next few months in the US, where political chaos will continue to abound.
And then finally, looking at home in the United Kingdom, last week we had a general election booting out a political party that's been in government for the better part of 14 years. Is that exactly what we expected? And is there going to be a significant market impact from this?
So, in fact, the UK has been in turmoil for the last few years, I would say since Brexit, for sure. But now it seems like an island of stability. The transition of power has been absolutely peaceful, cordial, civilized. If one looks at the last speech by Sunak and the first speech by Starmer in front of number 10, they were an example of institutional bon ton. What we would like to see in every country, a peaceful transition of power. You remember, not just January the 6th, that was kind of almost an insurrection in the US 2021. But you remember January 20th, where in fact Biden was inaugurated and Trump was not there. Imagine, I mean, is the polar opposite of what happened in the UK. Yet the damage that Brexit has done to the UK is very difficult to undo. What Starmer can do is try to reestablish a stronger relationship with the EU. There's no mention about new referendum, rejoining the EU, all that. Maybe in the second term, if it happens in 5 years, now there's so much to do to rebuild the country, starting from the basic stuff like the NHS, and Starmer will have a large majority to do that. In fact, and we can conclude with this, the gain in votes from the Labour Party was minimal, only 2% more than in 2019, when the Labour Party suffered the worst defeat since 1935. But this 2% more was enough to get a massive majority because of the electoral system that and the voters that wanted to punish the Tory party for everything they've done in the last, let's say, 5 years at least. And therefore that these divided votes between reform by Farage and the Conservative parties have meant that even 2% increase in the Labour Party was enough to get that absolutely gigantic majority compared to what the other parties have together. So, you know, in theory, the leftist party, the Labour Party has enough room to govern comfortably in coming years, but then we know the tendency of leftist party to splinter and start infighting and all the rest. And so, but time will tell whether Starmer will be able to keep it together.
Yeah, I mean, one of the key things about this election was just the sheer amount of voter volatility was the highest, I think, that we've ever seen in history. And so that's not to say that just because Labour has achieved a resounding, overwhelming landslide now, that they'll necessarily keep that 5 years later.
Exactly.
You know, the average vote in the UK is much too fickle for that, and our politics too volatile. So definitely much to watch within the country and to the broader continent. But as always, Brunello, thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you. Until next time.